Hey, my friends, how are we today? I've got, we were talking about before the podcast. I'm like, Nick, how do you want me to introduce you? He's like, however you want to. I'm like, you're really my non traditional workout buddy, is what you are.
That could mean all
But
kinds of things, but
yeah, but I guess through you want to tell everybody like through your training or kind of what you do, how you help clients, and then we'll dive into some questions.
sure. Yeah. I mean, my training is kind of what you'd expect. A lot of experience with strength coaching and personal training, PhD in exercise physiology, a lot of research in the cardiovascular health realm, paired with fitness. But really, the last 6 years branched away from the traditional and have been helping people in kind of what you mentioned, the away from the textbook version of that. I think just because I've seen so much of what that on the inside looks like, and I think a lot of that is just glitz and glamour. In reality, it doesn't get you really very far when you want to actually help people.
Yeah.
So a lot of that just comes down to developing relationships and understanding a person, and then from there, you've peeled enough of the onion away to see where you can actually help them. So it's been pretty cool 6 years. I'm very thankful for it.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. I,
Yeah.
I wanted him to come on because working out, whatever you want to call it, like working out in my body doesn't create that uh I don't want to say negative emotion, but that lower vibration emotion, right? Like working out to me is a fun thing. I know some people want to use the word movement, but like however you want to, whatever feels good in your body to use. But like how often I think as business owners, that's like one of the first things to go when we feel stressed or when we feel busy. And air quoting for those of you listening, like that. That's one of the things that some of us want to tend to put on the back burner, and how I have seen it. I think I used to subscribe to that, and also how much doing that really impacts all of it, right? Physical,
Absolutely.
emotional, all of our well-being. So, um, I wrote some questions down. So here we go.
Hmm. Yes.
Um, so most people look at working out movement from a like get to an end approach
Mm.
versus I think you and I feel very differently. Nick has helped me with some surfing stuff. He's helped me train for a sprint triathlon. And I think that when we worked together, it was very much of like enjoying the journey, enjoying like what can our bodies do versus I want to get to this place. Um, and so tell us about kind of your thought process there, because I do think you are the non-traditional coach, workout buddy.
Yeah, well, I think we've all been so conditioned to have some kind of a start date and an end date. It's either preseason, middle of the season, postseason, off season, right? That's all you're taught in most of the schooling is this is how you're supposed to train an athlete, right? It's always a start and a stop. Or the last 10 years, it's like, so many different races to get into. It's like, I want to run my first marathon, or I want to do a triathlon or whatever, right? It's like, buy this program, start date, end date.
Yeah.
And I think we've all, at least from my experience, I've done so many things that have had this huge lead up and build up to this end point. And then you get there and you're at such a loss for what you just did
Yeah.
because what you've been sold or what you imagined was going to happen doesn't necessarily align with the reality of it.
Yeah.
So I kind of took that and spun it into the world of movement because I find that the older I get, the more I just love being in tune with the connection of brain and body.
Yeah.
And none of that has any kind of start or end. It's just kind of all in this fluid flow kind of experience, right?
Yeah.
And I think the start and end takes all of that capacity to get there. I feel like it removes it because you're so worried about what you're doing in the moment and how you're going to get there. In reality, you never get there because you're so worried about getting there. The
Yeah.
space is not achievable or attainable anymore. So I think that can be said for a million things, especially for the high achieving person that's in any arena. I think once you get to that almost elite place where it's not about the end result, I could care less about the end result. It's
Yeah.
going to happen regardless. I'm just going to be in the moment when I can be, right?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is, I mean, you said brain and body, but I think a lot of times a lot of us are in our brains, right? And we are imagining what it's going to be like, what it's, going to feel like versus that gets to occur right now if we are present,
Hmm.
if we are connected. if we are focused on like you said, like the end result will happen if we focus on like why are we even moving to begin with
Hmm.
versus I want to get here and so this is the action I have to take in order to get there.
Right. Yeah. And I think I've, at least from what I've hoped to do and what I've always tried to do with everybody I've worked with is, and this freaks some people out at the start because they're like, well, how much should I be lifting? What's the number? And I'm like, I couldn't tell you how much I've lifted the past 2 years, like, or today. It doesn't matter. Right. I've got this, I've envisioned how hard I want to be challenged today. And I match that with whatever the weight is. Right. And I think when you get to that point, you really access your true capacity that day. Because every day is going to be different, right? Some days we feel amazing. You can throw weight on the bar all day long and you can do it. Other days you just get crushed by it. Um, so I really have honed in on, I asked the question to myself, and I really have people to consider this as to being the main staple of their movement is like, I feel better after than I did before I started? And if that's the central theme and if that's what you chase, then you're likely going to succeed almost every time, even though you failed through the entire thing. Right? Like you work to the point where like you've pushed yourself where it feels really good, right? And you quote unquote failed, but in the end, you win. In that twisted web of however you want to think about that, you're proving to yourself that, you know, these challenges and these quote unquote failures lead you to the spot you want to be. And you can do that every day, which is like, where else can you do that every day and have really no negative outcome from it? I don't know. I haven't been able to find it yet. So,
I love this so much because it's really a tapping in and tuning into your body. And like you said, like a lot of traditional people that help you, what do you want to call it? Work out, lose weight, get stronger, get fit, all the things is all about like has felt right about you're saying about the numbers and about like very ego based, right? Like, what is it that how much can I lift or what is my running or all of that versus the like in your body today, tapping in and tuning in and like, what are you feeling? Because you're exactly right. Like, there are days where I'm like, I don't even know, but I'm just going to go because I know I always feel better when I go, right?
mhm.
And I move versus it's almost like you're I don't like the word self-sabotaging, but like when you're so attached to the numbers and you wake up and you don't feel like that you can be, that you can lift or you can do that amount of weight, then you're already like in your head already finding the reasons versus just enjoying and going and experiencing the movements for the joy of the movement, you know?
Yeah, I think that's the definition of self sabotage. You start that conversation and then we all know where it ends, right?
Yeah.
And you really just want to employ the behavior. In reality, I think that's the main goal is how can I just get that first foot in front of the other one?
Yeah.
That's the hardest part of the workout every time, no matter how fit you become. That's
Yeah.
always the hardest part of the workout. Um, and I think that, yeah, that creates the opposite behavior that we're hoping to create, right?
Yeah.
And I only reason I practice this way is because I've burnt the other side so far to the end that I know where it ends. Um,
Mm,
and sure, it sounds cool in the moment because, oh man, I'm achieving all these milestones. Like I put on 5 more pounds on the bar than last week, right? I kicked off 5 seconds from my 400-meter interval that I was doing in this workout. Man, I'm getting so much faster, right? But then it's like a never ending moving goalpost. Like,
yeah.
can I get this much faster? Like, there is the law of diminishing returns. We all know this exists. We're all human. And then that becomes the focus of like, why can't I get better? I'm working this hard. I'm working harder than I should be working, not
Mm.
seeing the result because I'm so focused on the result. Um, I've had a lot of people, I don't do a whole lot of weight loss people, but I've had people that come to me that have tried everything else, can't lose weight. And I'm like, what if we just don't ever talk about it? What if
Yes.
that's not part of your goal? And then all of a sudden, 6 months from now, they lost 50 pounds. I'm like, I think you put so much pressure on your nervous system to lose weight. It freaks out and it holds on to every little piece that it can. Right.
Mhm. Yeah. This is I wrote down, like, who is the person, right? Like, instead of instead of thinking about, like, how much am I going to lift or running faster, I would love it if you would share a little bit also about your story too, because I don't know if we've ever really talked about that. But,
Mhm.
like, who is the person that, like, loves themselves enough to, like, everyday movement is important to them? Who is the person? Like, that is something that, like, I always ask myself of, like, who's the person that values, right? Like, being able to, like, when my kids, like, come jump on the trampoline with me, I get to go do that, and I don't even have to think twice about that, right? Like,
Mhm.
and I think, like you're saying, like, we can do this with movement and working out. We can do this with business. We can do this with money. We can do this in every area of our life, right? Where we're constantly so focused on the result that the whole, like, we're missing all of the goodness,
Yeah.
right? In the middle, we
Yeah.
really are.
I think this so aligns with your last 5 years, 4 years of like when you focused on the result that hard, you missed out on all the fun.
Yeah.
But in the moment, like those tedious, your brain almost sees it as these tedious little stepping stones to get to the result. But in reality, all those stepping stones are like really cool. They're really
It's
fun.
everything. It's
Yeah.
it's everything. And I think also too, because you said high achievers, like, I think that there is, and I'd be curious for you of what you've experienced with people that you've coached of, like, I don't know if it's a wiring in our brain or, like, there is that, like, I noticed myself slipping back into that last week, and the reason why I caught it, it was because how in tune I am with my body. And
Hmm.
I was like, oh, I've been here before. This does not feel good. And I think that once you have come on the other side and you know what fun and joy and calm and connectedness feels like on a consistent basis, when you do go back there, because I think it's just kind of, I don't want to say natural or will happen, but I think, like, that's just kind of, at least for me, it's like been part of it, right? When I do go back there, I catch it so much faster because I'm like, oh, we're back in old patterns again versus no, we do things because it's fun and it feels good. And that's kind of our North Star, right? Versus, I think when you're in that space of in your body, when it doesn't feel good on a consistent basis, you don't have that contrast to be like, oh, it actually can feel like this?
Yeah. Yeah. That pattern is so much comfort in that pattern.
Mm,
Your body always seeks that comfort when in
yeah.
reality, you know the result. That comfort is just a disguise for misery.
Mm,
The unknown is where all the fun happens, but man, you can't predict it,
yeah.
which is why you
And it's
gotta be
scary.
pretty which is why you gotta be so fit, because then you don't have to predict it, because you can just do it. Right? That's part of it. That's part of
Tell
the
us a
reward.
tell us a little bit about, because I want to know, you mentioned this before and I think you've, like, posted this sometimes on Instagram and stuff, but, like, what has your journey been? Because I think that there are people that listen that are like, easy for you to say you do
Oh,
this
yeah.
all day every day, right? Like, and I one of the things on the podcast that I want always people to come back to is, like, all human. We're all human. We all go through this no matter what our air quotes specialty is, or what we do day in and day out still
Yeah.
shows up for us.
Yeah, I think it's a it's easy to project that for sure. But I can tell anybody that's listening, like, sure, my job, my career, my gifts and my calling is to help people gain access to their bodies again, right? And they might look at me and be like, "Oh, it's easy for him to work out. He has all the time in the world to do it." Like, I can give you an example of my yesterday.
Mhm.
I've got 3 little kids. I kind of get the call to move my body. However, they're all 3 with me. So I think I changed 2 diapers, 3 outfits because they were playing in like water, like squirt guns and sprinklers and stuff. At least 2 snacks, right? That's what my workout looked like. So it's not like I have this amazing, like all the songs are playing and I'm like purely focused and like no distractions. Like, no, that's pretty much how my every workout looks. Because all of my kids stay home except for one when he's in school because he's in first grade. But
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you the last time I had this nice serene, like no distractions workout. And I'm so thankful for that because I get that connection time with him and they get to see that like this is just a normal thing of what people do. Oh, they lift things, they smile, and they're in a good mood, and we dance, and we get to play while we're doing it, like all this cool stuff built in, right?
Yeah.
Um, that is like that's pretty special. Not that I wouldn't like a calm, quiet workout every now and then, but it's just this is just where I am. Um, but I think I've already forgotten the question you just asked me.
No, just like your story. And I want to add to this because there was a point in time when Grayson was little like that. And in the beginning, I would get frustrated because I was like, can't I just have
Oh,
a
I
workout,
got
right?
so
Like
frustrated at the
you
start.
want to,
Yeah,
right? You want to
yeah.
be able to
That used to be
have
my
you
time. That was my time. How
oh
dare you
yes.
encroach on my time?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a form of resistance, right? And then you get to realize you're like, you know what? This is my new way of living, right? Like I
Mhm.
think sometimes we want to go back to like, oh, well, that's my time when you didn't have little ones and you did get to have all of that, right? Versus now it's like this is the new air quotes normal for you, right? In this season of life. And how are we going to like we can either use it of like I never get time on myself and that's not why I don't get to work out. Or you know what? The kids, like I agree with you, like Grayson just thought everyone had a home gym because that's just what her parents did, right? And so
Mhm.
the the I think the best way we can teach our children is by being the people, right? That we are trying to teach them how to be, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
So the question for you was, you know, when because you did go through a period of like it wasn't about the journey. It was about like, okay, I want to lift heavier. I want to, and you were talking earlier about like how you really had to kind of transform that in terms to be,
Mhm.
you know, who you are now.
Yeah, I think early on in whatever kind of trajectory you have envisioned for yourself, those mile markers and achievements, they kind of open your eyes to what that environment looks like, right? So it's like me as a runner, when I started, I mean, I played team sports and I played, I was, college golfer. And then when I graduated, I wanted to just be like, I worked out every day. It was just part of what I did. But I want to be competitive still. Like I'm still in that competitive age. So I was like, well, I'm fit. Not very big. Like I understand my lineage. I'm like, I could probably run pretty good, right? So I was like, I'm just gonna run my first marathon. Just never ran a race before. It was
Just decided you wanted to.
yeah, 2010 or whatever. I'm gonna run a marathon, whatever. So it's like, all right. So I picked out a conservative plan, followed it to a T, never missed anything, right? It's just what we do. Ran the race. I was like, that's not bad. This is pretty good. I ran like a 3:45 or something like that. Opened my whole world to like what you need to do to get faster. So each year I kind of threw in like the next level of like, this is what I need to do to prioritize to get faster. It's always like, you know,
Next
yeah,
up,
like
one
next
more,
step
one
is
more.
what you have to do. It's like you got to follow the guidelines, you got to follow all the whatever, all the programs, and then get a little faster. And then 6 years from there, I qualify for Boston, run Boston, set my PR, right? So didn't even celebrate that because I'm like, oh, I got to beat that next year, right?
Good classic overachiever. Good job.
Never even once celebrated that like amazing experience that I had. Like all this went like the stars aligned for that race. It was so good. I think back on it now and have much more appreciation for it. And then the next 2 years following that, the wheels just fall off
Mm.
hard because I pushed it beyond all the warning signs because my training plan said I had to do this.
What
And
was your body telling you and what was it showing you that you were ignoring?
oh man, so many things. Inability to focus, bowel issues, exhaustion, um, like irritability, all that kind of stuff, right? Um,
And
so
were you
many.
just so damn determined, like you're like, this is what I have to do, never
Oh
checking in
yeah,
with your body?
never
It
once.
was
Yeah, I mean, I said some pretty cool. Like for me, I ran a 4:55 mile. Never
I'm
thought I'd
like,
ever do
I don't
that
even know
before.
if that's good
Yeah,
or I have
for
no
like
idea.
a real runner, that's a warm up. Like the guy I ran with, that he paced me to that. He could run a four. He ran a 4:03. Like that's just like a jog for him, right?
Yeah.
But for
Mhm.
a person that like wants to run, that's freaking fast, right?
Mhm.
It's a
Mhm.
damn near sprint the entire time. And then I think I ran a half marathon at like a 1:19, so just under it was like a 5:50 something mile. And sitting on these really cool landmarks, and then just like that, you
So
push
how did
past.
your body tell you? What
Oh,
ultimately
yeah. I signed up for one last marathon after I was like, should I even be doing this? And I had to stop like all my long runs. I could only run like 5 miles at a time before I had to go use the bathroom. So I had to like plan my runs around my house so I could go sit on the toilet for 10 minutes. Right. I'm like, this isn't normal. Right. And then I got to the point where I despised even running.
mm,
I think like it finally took like a 2x4 to my head to say like, maybe there's something else that you can approach this by, right? A little different
yeah.
strategy than ever. And then I looked at a picture from a race and I was a freaking skeleton.
Mm,
Never looked at myself like that before. I was like, this
mhm.
isn't good. So that's when I started to say like, oh, well, I followed to a T all these things that I've told I should have done, and now I've woken up to where it really the end point of that looks like. So what
Yeah.
if I like totally flipped it upside down and didn't follow any of that stuff and
Was
just
it scary for you at first? Because I think that's a lot,
oh
like we
for
were talking
sure
about the unknown, right? Like,
yeah
talk a little bit about that because I think for a lot of people, us included, right? It's scary in the beginning because even though we have the evidence that it air quotes worked that way, even though we didn't feel very well,
hmm
our bodies were shouting at us, but like we do have evidence that like we got to that place versus, yeah, like you say, like flipping it upside down and going into the unknown and trusting, right? Like
yeah.
really trusting.
That's what the trust, the T word, that's the big one because think of everything you've ever done to where you are now. For anybody listening, there was probably either a goal attached to it or some kind of ending, right?
Yep. Yep.
What if you just, as an experiment, what if you don't? Right? And for me, I think it was maybe a little scary to think about it, but what I think I realized the most was there was no more pressure on yourself anymore.
Yes.
And I got so used to that pressure just competing in, when I was a Division 1 college golfer, like you're getting paid to be there, right? Like it's a very competitive environment. And I carried that over for the next 10 years and I didn't realize how much that pressure had built for so long.
Yep.
Now it's like, oh, I can just like do this for fun and
Mhm.
the result doesn't matter anymore. Like, whoa, right? That really opened up my eyes to exploring it further, I think, was that just literally I could hear the teapot releasing all the pressure.
Mm.
Um, and then I think once you get to that point where, and it's hard, it's even hard for me to say this now because I know people aren't going to believe it, but it's like, why, what if you don't have to worry about a result? Like, why the result?
I can just hear the brains going, they're exploding right now.
You don't have to focus on a result.
Because we've been so conditioned, right? Like we've been
Yeah.
so conditioned in society to have a result. What are you working for? What like goal, 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 goal,
Yeah.
goal? I'm rereading The Illusion of Money for I don't know how many, a bajillion times.
Yeah.
And he was talking about the same thing. He was talking about like goal versus like what is your intention? Intention is, like you say, I want to have more fun. I want to have
Mhm.
more patience. I want to have whatever it is versus goal of like I want to be at this weight, I want to lift this much, I want to.
Right.
And the expansiveness that happens when you let go of the goal and you really just set the intention.
Yeah, I think there has to be a result. Like
But
there
it's a
will be
byproduct.
there
There's
will
a
be exactly, right? Like there will be a result. Um, I'm not saying there shouldn't be one because there will be one. However, when you remove the pressure from the result, you'll realize that some of the result that you hope to achieve, you're setting the bar real low for yourself. Because how could you predict what you're actually capable of achieving,
yeah.
right? So what I found is like, you know, but I think it really all goes back to trust because you still have to have enough trust in yourself that you can achieve that and you're worthy of achieving that and you're
Mhm.
capable of achieving that,
Mhm.
right? And then the result takes care of itself, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not like, oh, I don't have enough because this is where a lot of people fumble is like they don't have the trust that if they don't work out tomorrow, they're never going to get back on the horse and keep working out, right? If they skip a day, I don't have the trust in myself that I can get back and can make that part of my day, right? It's too easy to skip the next one, the next one, the next one. Which sure, like call it for what it is, right? Bring it out in the open. Like we need to hear it. you don't trust yourself, and that's okay,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We've all been there. I've been there. But until you truly do believe in yourself that you can do it and you trust yourself enough, then you realize that all of that can be fun. Every part of the process can be fun.
The word that came to mind too is the compassion part, right?
Mhm.
Because when you have compassion for yourself and you recognize, right? Like, okay, the way that I've built everything up until this point has been by being hard on myself, has been by forcing myself to do things. Here we go back to trust, right? We don't know we can do it. We don't trust ourselves that we can do it from that compassionate, fun, joyful place.
Mhm.
And like Nick says, of like, what if it was an experiment? What if it was like, let's just see what happens versus the pressure? And I also wrote down like you said this earlier, is that like, and maybe not in these exact words, but like our body's feedback, like we're used to pressure, like our bodies and the actual chemicals that are coursing through our veins are used to, if we are from that pressured place, we feed on that.
Mhm.
And so our bodies are like, hey, wait a minute, we haven't been here lately, we need to have some more of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a dopamine response, very, because you get that immediate satisfaction of, I achieved it.
Yeah.
That's just a chemical loop of like, that was a good thing. Let's get some more of it, regardless of the process that got you there.
Yeah. So what would you say to people that are like, okay, this all sounds really great,
Mhm.
and also because like the consistency, like I think that can be a word sometimes that people are like, "Ugh, I'm not consistent." So what are your thoughts around
Mhm.
consistency and like what that actually looks like, feels like, all that?
I love that. Yeah. So a big part for me early on and even now is I kind of go back to what I loved when I was like full-time scientist academia type thing was like I love the experiment. It's like you know it's been done before, you look into it, you're like, wouldn't it be cool if I put this together and we see what happens? That sounds really fun to me, right? No pressure. Just using my brain, figuring stuff out, let's see what happens, right? And
Mhm.
then if you apply that to like getting your body moving, then it's like you create a system for yourself of like, well, let's create that little experiment every day. Let's ease into this whole thing that workout looks like. Because as soon as most people hear workout, it's like they're sitting and they're comfortable. The word workout comes up, and their brain envisions the most challenging, most difficult part of that workout. Doesn't see anything else, just sees like the death part, right? Doesn't see like the foam rolling and the breathing and the moving
Oh,
around,
those are so great. Let
right?
let Trubee design those for you. Those are some of my favorite.
Yeah, so it's like you need like some kind of a system that leaves breadcrumbs for your brain to like
Mm,
ease up the reins and
yeah,
say, "Oh, this is what workout is today. That's cool. What's the next piece? What's the next piece?" And before you know it, then you're into the big part. But it's like enjoyable because you're prepared. Your brain is like actually unlocked your body to say, "Okay, let's do this." So I treat every day like that in that once I get moving and do these simple, easy things that make me feel better, the days where like I notice feeling better, I'm like, "Oh, this is gonna be a good day. Let's see what I made of today." The days where it's like, doesn't feel that great, but I can probably still keep moving, then you just work with what you've got that day. Don't live to see another day. But what you did do is you employed the behavior that you really desire to do. You trusted yourself enough to start it. You did it enough to feel better, and now you're like, "Wow, this is great. What can I do the rest of the day?" And in the days where the stars align, you hit it hard and you get way more fit, right? You're
yeah,
resetting the expectation of what you're capable of, like what your body is truly meant to do every day.
yeah. And I think the thing that we also don't talk enough about, like working out, moving, whatever you want to call it, is like the mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, like the whole entire effects that helps and creates. And by doing that, like I always, in like you're saying, sometimes in the morning, I also used to think like I have to work out in the morning. So like sometimes I just want a slow morning. But I love going outside in the middle of the day and working out, like just like listening to your body, and also knowing that I always feel better once I do it, right? Like when the mind's like, but it's this and that's like, yeah, but when I get done, I'm always like, thank you
Mhm.
so much.
Yeah. Yeah, think of how much bandwidth your brain wastes when you have that, like, conversation going back and forth of like, "Should I do it? Yes, you should. I don't want to. It's on your mind the entire day. So you've just used up, how much of your brain power when you're trying to get X, Y, and Z done for work or your career or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Whereas if you just say, I'm willing to be uncomfortable for these 3 or 5 minutes to get started in my movement and workout, give me 30 minutes to move my body.
Yep.
Then I can tell you from experience, once I'm in that frame of mind, I can get 6 hours of work done in 2 hours. And it's going to look really good. It's going to look way better than it did if I'm living with that internal turmoil
Yeah.
of that dialogue of like back and forth, because your focus is never where it needs to be. It's half there and it's half in front of you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like where our energy is split, right? Like it's just
Hmm.
that that I call it like a ping pong or a tug of war is what it
It
feels
is.
like, right? Versus
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm not doing it this morning because I want to have a slow, but lunchtime I'm going out there and the decision's just made.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna just like you said, just I'm going out there. I'm gonna see how I feel, and I'm gonna do a couple of things, and then I'm gonna get into it. You know.
And even if you stop after a couple of things, are you
Yep.
okay saying that is my workout for today?
Oh, that's a good one.
You're gonna have to
Okay. Yeah.
recondition yourself because sometimes that is your workout for today, and that was more than enough.
Yeah.
But if you've been conditioned to think it's got to be 45 minutes and I've got to be sweating and I got to be able to not move, then you're gonna have a rude awakening.
Yeah. I think a lot of people do, right? I think here we go
Oh,
back to like
almost everybody.
what we envision it to be versus, okay, that was, and you said this like worthy and deserving, but like it's enough, right? It's
Hmm.
enough of how you want to move your body for the day versus what it has to look like. Um, you said one other. Oh, when we were training together, because part of the sprint triathlon was for me to run, and I was like, let me just see if I like running. And one of the things that I don't know if I was surprised about, but I think a lot of us think, and you talked about this a little bit, of like we think we're going to start something and we're going to go from like 0 to 100, and versus 0 to 1 was like running for a minute, walking for two, and letting that be enough. And here we go back to like releasing the pressure of like, okay, I don't have to figure out how to run 30 minutes straight in the next X amount of weeks.
Hmm. Yeah.
And uh, allowing, like, I think, I guess it just goes back to so much of conditioning, right? That we have been taught, like, how we're supposed to train or what it's supposed to look like, and being compassionate with our bodies. Like, if you haven't ran in years or you don't enjoy running, first of all, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but like, if you don't
Mm,
enjoy running, why are you running, right? Like,
yeah. Talk about a
that's
way
my
to
thought.
make hate running even more by trying to run nonstop for 30 minutes. Well, I think I got an appreciation for it when I hung around some really top tier runners and their coaches. And in that world of running, they really don't try and increase their overall volume by more than 10% in a week. So you're like, okay, I'm thinking like, they're running like 100 miles a week or whatever. So I'm like, well, they can't go more than 10 miles. And you're really doing that to just try and level out the nervous system and try and reduce the impact for injury, right? That's there's like no real science behind it beyond like 8 million years of coaching and training. So I trust that a lot, right? That's probably what I look at more than what the paper's going to tell me, because that's a nice controlled environment and running is anything but that. Um, so I'm like, okay, if I'm talking to a person that wants to get back into running, if they run 0 miles and I increase it by 10%, then we're only talking about like,
I'm
well,
like,
let's
I
say they
can't do
run
the
three
math.
miles a week.
Yeah, I'm like,
Let's say they run three, or let's say you run 10 miles a week and I increase it by 10%. That's only adding one extra mile for the week.
yep,
So if they run zero, then why should we think running for 30 minutes consecutively is going to be a good idea?
yeah,
Right. So I'm like, well, what if we
yeah,
break it down into like sizable little pieces of like, this is what this running feels like, but it's not so long to where like my brain goes into fight or flight and I hate every piece of it. No, like I get to run for a little bit, feel the feels, stop. Oh, this feels pretty good. This is nice. I get to walk a little bit. And by the time you feel good again, you run for a little bit. And you're basically trying to trick your brain because it's really good at telling you you suck all the time.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So anytime you can go in the back door when your brain is patrolling the front door all the time, then that is what I've tried to maximize in everything that I do from now on.
Tell us a little bit about, because you've talked about nervous system, but like break it down for us a little bit to understand when you say the fight or flight. And I mean, we talk about this from, you know, I've had other people on that talk about the, I call it survival response, right? But
Mhm.
like, how does that actually show up for us when we are actually trying to work out?
Great question. Yeah, so just a basic almost anatomy part is, thinking central nervous system is your brain and spinal cord. Some would argue the eyes since they're directly connected to the brain. And then your peripheral nervous system is all the sensors, all the connections with your muscles, all the stuff that picks up information from your environment, right? So it's all kind of think of it as like a big computer almost. Well, you can break that down into two parts. One is meant for fight or flight, right? The sympathetic part of that nervous system. And it's hardwired to when we get like our heart rates above 100 beats per minute, we flip into sympathetic nervous system. Everything has to be revved up. Like for our bodies to move, heart needs to beat faster. It needs to pump with more what's called contractility. It needs to beat with more vigor, right? That nervous system has to be there for those things to take place. We've got
Hmm.
to exchange more gases out in the periphery. So things need to be moving faster, right? We've got
Okay.
to, so that's our sympathetic nervous system. Well, if you get so used to that, then just like anything else, your body is so efficient in that once you do something a lot, it gets really good at seeing that a lot. And
Mm.
I can get really good at doing something I do all the time, right?
Yep. Yep.
So if you're always in like next deadline, got to get this done by 8 p.m., got to finish this paper, got to send the checks out, right? You're always revving up in the background that part of the nervous system. So you can't get out of it. Your body likes it now. So you feed it,
Mhm.
right? To where you try and sit down and chill, you're like, this doesn't feel right. This is stupid. I'm not accomplishing anything,
Yeah.
right? Because the other side of that is let's breathe. Let's use our stomachs to breathe. You don't use your shoulders to breathe. Don't use your pecs. Don't use your neck, right? Use your stomach. Use your diaphragm, right? Be bored. Like hear the birds talking.
This is why Nick is my workout buddy, because this is what I say all the time. Be
Yeah.
bored. Yeah.
But you have to enter, for me, I have to enter the workout with that being the dominant force. Because
Mm.
once it's flipped, then nothing that you do will ever be good enough. Because it's not,
Mm.
we're not jazzing here, right? We're like,
Zinning up in here.
yeah. So then you can, at that point, you're moving slow enough to make the connection with your body that you're desiring,
Mm.
right? And
Yeah.
then once you kind of get moving, then you can rev things up, but you're still in control, right? You started from a place of control.
So, because a lot of people, right? I think maybe we're here at one point. I
Oh,
for
for
sure was
sure.
here at one point, right?
1000%.
So, how do we come to our workouts? I'm joking, but like Zen light, right? Like, because if you've been going all day, if that is your natural state that you operate in on a consistent basis, how do you
Mhm.
flip the switch to get to workout? Or if you're waking up in the morning and your brain's already like 90 miles an hour, what are some of the things that you suggest or that people can play with to try
Mhm.
to get into that state first to then be able to work out?
That's a great question. I think it's going to be different for everybody. Some
Yep.
tools that have helped me are, like we were talking before we started this conversation, was like, what if obviously treating it like an experiment because you never know what you're going to be able to do that day. But like, what if I just entered that space of like, this is pretty cool that I can move my body right now, right? Like coming at it from like a grateful gratitude, which people probably don't want to hear gratitude because I think it gets overplayed a lot in different arenas. But if you truly are grateful for like being able to like connect with your body and move it and all the cool stuff that it can do, because for my what I envision is I know all of like the actual physiology that's taking place
Hmm.
just for you to like engage one tiny part of your body. Like literally 100 things happen in like 1/1000th of a second for you to do that. Like I
Yeah.
don't even it's unbelievable that once you dive into it. So I'm like, and that happens all the time for me. Like
Yeah. Without
that's so
asking or
cool.
thinking about
That's
it.
right. Like that is
Yeah.
like the creator did some pretty cool stuff for us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So when you start to approach it from that, and it's like, oh, things start to like level down a little bit for you. And then one thing I always employ, and this is just an easy cheat mechanism that anybody can do. And there's not maybe not even any research on this, is I do soft tissue, like foam rolling, stick rolling, all that kind of stuff. Most of the research on that is for like acute changes you get directly after mobility, right? That's where most of the
Okay.
research is. However, what you're doing in the moment is you're retuning the nervous system because you are lengthening the muscle fibers each time you roll on there, right? So it's sending a signal back of like, how much tension am I holding here in my body, right? It sends the information back to your brain and spinal cord. It sends it back. Okay, let's make an adjustment. So every time you do that, you find all these really tight places where your body's holding all this tension. You send the information back. Your brain's like, why? This is stupid. Like, chill. Why are you holding so much tension here? Sends that message back to you. So you're like, you're refining all these areas that are holding up the pent up sympathetic tight energy, right? And you reduce some of that. So the foam roller for me is like an easy, cheap mechanism of like, let's find these tight places. Let's see how stupid this is. Let's chill out. And then I start gradually moving with my more enhanced range of motion. I'm breathing better. And then all of a sudden, like, you're not worried about anything anymore. You're just like, this is really cool. I can keep moving. I can challenge myself now. But it's not from a point of like disgust and have to.
Yeah.
It's from a place of experimentation and like, wow, look what I'm capable of doing today.
What I love about the foam rolling too, 'cause when, you had me start doing that is because it's a way to start working out without having to start like
Yeah.
you don't just like go to the gym, you know what I mean? But it's like that gradual of like one, it feels good for sure. It
Mhm,
feels good. Two, it's a way to like, okay, you're already kind of in the process of moving your body, but very slowly
mhm.
versus, okay, I'm going to work out and now what, let me just go start jumping rope or whatever it is,
Yeah.
versus like, okay, so that gradual and it just like you said, it feels good. And then all of the science behind it and the magic that happens
Mhm,
when you're
mhm.
doing that.
Yeah, and then you just early on, you set the intention of like, "That feels good, but it can feel even better." Like, that you
Mm,
just kinda keep that like, that's the theme, that's the undertone of your whole workout. It's like, "That felt good." It was hard, I pushed myself, like, felt pretty good, right? And I think you can take that forever with no endpoint.
and you just said like what feels good, what can feel even better is like we literally have to flip the switch on depending on what your relationship has been like with exercise and movement of like allowing it to feel good. I don't know if we said this in the podcast or I was thinking of it or we were talked about it, before we got on, but like how much of organized sports like there's
Mhm.
times at Grayson's gymnastics or things that I've heard her at tumbling, where they're like almost as a punishment like, oh, you're going to do x amount of push-ups or you're going to, so we've used movement as a way to punish ourselves versus pleasure and fun and enjoyment and
Mhm.
yeah, expansion. I don't know, I'm just like let me move my shoulders back.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, I think we do a lot of disservice in competitive youth sports right now, and I think it's all geared, from my experience, from the parents, from an egotistical standpoint, right? I think most of us
Yeah.
are at that point where we're starting to realize that, but it's hard to jump off the train. Um, but I think I grew up in kind of the era on the hedge of getting into that, but I was gifted a lot of opportunity without any kind of formal, structured, um, intense kind of someone always looking over my shoulder.
Yeah.
Right? It was just like, hey, pick this club up and just try and hit the ball.
Yep.
Right? And nobody gave me any pointers, and I think that was done very specifically from my dad, my grandfather, of like, let's just see what he can do with his own body,
Mm,
and if he does it enough, let's and then you get to the point where it's like they might toss in a little something, but it was never in the form of like, you got to do this or this is what you need to do to get better or whatever. It's like, why don't you just try that, see what happens, you know?
yeah. Yeah.
Without any of the pressure or any of the, punishment reward, none of that complex. It's just like, just see what happens, man. Just try it. No,
Yeah.
now it's just like, you got to have, it's right back to our conversation started. This milestone's got to be reached at 8 and you got to do X number of this by 10. And it's just like, and we're seeing that most of the kids now have no fundamentals. They can do all the big shots, but like, you can't win with big shots all the time. You're going to miss a lot of the big shots. We know that.
And you're taking the fun out of it. I don't remember what documentary it was that I watched, but I think it was like, um, they interviewed what they called the greats, like, and Wayne Gretzky was on there. And he's like, I can't tell you how many times that I get parents to come up to me and be like, tell my kid to, like what you did. And he was like, when I was your kid's age, I was playing basketball in my backyard. That's what I
Yeah.
was doing. He's like, I didn't even pick up a hockey stick. I don't even think it was until he was like in high school. He's like, I was doing all kinds of sports, and that was so refreshing to hear because, because I think a lot of parents are like that, right? Like it's almost like how the moms used to be like with the weddings, right? We want to relive
Mhm.
our daughter's wedding, through us. It's like that's what it's become with sports versus
Yep.
like let's just go have fun. Like that is the point of life. That is the point of all of it, right? Is like to
Yeah.
have fun and let's just see what happens. And then you don't have the pressure when you're just doing it for the hell of it and let's see what we can do kind of
I
thing.
know. I
So
think you ingrain so many lessons of like you don't if there's an end mark, you aim exactly for that end point.
yeah.
But you're capable of so much more than that end point, right? It's
Yeah.
like I have a group chat with two guys. We talk every week. One I had on my podcast. His name is Stephen Burkett, retired Marine, has four Guinness Book of World Records in the kettlebell swing, and
Like
he is
heaviest, like heaviest
so
swinging
like
or
like
what is
it's
he?
like the most amount of weight swung in an hour,
Wow. Okay.
the most amount of weight swung in a minute, the most with a certain weight max unbroken without stopping. He swung like a 70-pound kettlebell like 1,680 times without stopping. Right.
Crazy.
But what he's found in all of his training and stuff is like, if I think I can do 500, I will stop at 500.
Yeah. Yep.
If like your brain gets so used to this like
You
number, like, oh, that's a good number. It hates 507.
yeah. Yeah.
It's not this amazingly round number, like, right? So it's like he picked up on that in his train. That like you take yourself to these numbers, but you stop there. But that was only 60% of what you had that day, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like you pick up on little stuff like that, and I think that's where most of our, especially with like youth sports now, it's like we have these set points, but like number one, my kid could probably do more than that had he just had more diversification of movement in general
Yeah.
and less pressure.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've had a lot of conversation with my oldest. He's only 7, but all of his friends are like hardcore travel baseball, coach pitch already. This and then like, man, I want to play baseball. I'm like, that's cool, but like we can play in the yard. I'll play with you anytime you want to play, right? Or it's like I want to play this and that. I'm like, let's do it. Let's play it right now. But I know the environment, and I know people working in that environment. They're like, don't get your kid in this league. Do not do it. You know. So I fought pretty hard to. He's tried a lot of different sports, and he's just done it for fun. And we haven't pressured him.
Yeah.
He's 7, for goodness
Yep.
sakes.
I know. That's the thing. It's like it's starting earlier and earlier. Like I always said, like we're not doing any of that select stuff or any of
No,
that stuff because we're gonna play. And that is the whole point of all of the sports is to play.
to play.
And that's
I
it.
think I
And
think if you're good, somebody will find you. If you're that good, and you will be, because you're not in the mill of all the other kids, you will have more opportunities.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, totally. Anything else you want to add or comment on that we maybe didn't touch on that you
I feel like this has been fun. This has been a good one. Um, but yeah, I think just as a theme, like anybody that's listening that really wants to, see what they're capable of, not only in movement, but like maybe it's your business, maybe it's making money, maybe it's whatever, maybe it's your family or time, you know, let whatever you can do, but still try and do it every day, right? Create that part of your routine with movement, but like let it be enough some days. Like even if you think you can do more, stop.
hmm, that's the work. That's the effort, right? That really
Yeah,
is the effort for a lot of us, right? It's like, um,
because you're
how
gonna do it
much
tomorrow, right?
yep, yep.
Yeah.
I always say like protecting the asset, right? Like,
You're protecting the asset because you're building the business. I had a really successful business guy, worked with him. Like we're talking like $100 million plus guy.
yeah,
And I'm like, okay, how long did it take you to build that up before you sold your business for 25 million? He's like 27 years. I was like, so we're going to accomplish the same thing in 6 months? Like, if that's your expectation, I will send you to someone else that can help you do that. But
Yeah.
like, if you really want to do this to where this becomes your life and you become that person that you ultimately want to be, like, think of like the things you did. Like, did you build that entire business in 27? Like, no.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you do this a little bit one day and a lot of it the other day? Yes. Why can't we take that same approach?
Yeah.
Why can't 10 minutes of workout be cool on Monday? Because it's
That's
got
what
to
I
be
did out
60
there.
minutes. It's got to be
Yep.
60 minutes. Like, right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think that's really wise, and also like coming back to like trusting your body, trusting yourself, like really tuning out all of the noise, all of what you've ever learned about working out, moving your body, what it should and should not be doing, um all of it, and like what feels good for my body in this moment, and do that.
could be 10 minutes, could be 5 minutes, could be an hour.
Yep.
Whatever it is, that was enough.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Nick. Where
That's
can
good.
people find you, learn more about you, all the things?
Yeah. TruebeHealth.com or at Dr. Nick Trubee on Instagram.
Okay, I'll put it all in the show notes. Thank you,
Cool.
my friend.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for everybody that's listening. I appreciate it.